Hello and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely demystify the microscopic building blocks that construct literally all living things. We're talking about the discovery, the shape, the size, the core characteristics, and the unifying theory of the cell. Whether you're gearing up for a big exam or you just have a really deep curiosity about biology, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to cover all the essential data, the key scientists who figured this stuff out, and the fundamental rules that govern life right down at its smallest level. Okay, think about this for a second. What do a towering redwood tree, a microscopic bacteria, and you actually have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But if we look closely, I mean very, very closely, the answer is right there. You are all constructed from the exact same fundamental unit of life. Let's move to and see how this builds. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The spark of discovery. 2. Unifying rules, cell theory. 3. Variations in size and shape. 4. Prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. And 5. Plant versus animal cells.
Starting right off with Section 1, the spark of discovery.
Okay, let's dive into this. For most of human history, this entire microscopic universe was completely invisible to us. But once lenses started getting better, a really fascinating biological detective story began. Back in 1665, Robert Hooke observed cork tissue under a primitive microscope. By 1674, Antony von Leeuwenhoek was actually watching living, moving particles that he playfully called animalcules. Jump forward to 1831, and Robert Brown spots the nucleus in plant cells. This set the perfect stage for Schleiden and Schwann to propose the very first cell theory in 1839. And then finally, in 1858, Rudolf Virchow added the crucial missing piece. He stated that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Let's actually jump back to Hooke for a moment because this is pretty cool. When Hooke looked at that dead cork tissue, he compiled his work into a famous book called Micrographia. In it, he described the cork as looking like a honeycomb with a great number of little boxes. That simple observation gave us the scientific term cell. It comes from the Latin word cella, which simply means a small compartment. So the word cell itself is literally over 300 years old. Moving on to Section 2, unifying rules, cell theory. So the crucial point is, once scientists realized these little compartments were just everywhere, they basically established a universal constitution for all biological life. Modern cell theory gives us 4 absolute foundational rules. First, all organisms are made of cells, no exceptions. Second, new cells are formed by the division of pre-existing cells. Third, cells contain passed-on genetic material. And fourth, all metabolic reactions take place inside the cells. This applies to everything from amoebas to elephants. But you might be wondering, what is actually inside that cell carrying out all those metabolic reactions? Well, the answer is protoplasm. The term was coined by Purkinje in 1839, and later on the scientist Huxley brilliantly described it as the physical basis of life. I like to think of protoplasm as a complex, living molecular soup. It's a gelatinous colloidal system made primarily of water, but it's carrying glucose, amino acids, minerals, and enzymes. It is literally the living content where all the magic happens. Let's look at Section 3, variations in size and shape. While the unifying rules of cell theory apply universally, the physical manifestation of a cell is incredibly diverse. One size definitely does not fit all. To understand the sheer scale we're dealing with, look at these extremes. An ostrich egg, which is actually a single cell, can be a massive 150 millimeters. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, a mycoplasma bacteria is a practically invisible 0.15 micrometers. To put that into a relatable perspective, a typical human red blood cell sits right around 7 to 8 micrometers. The size variation out there is just staggering. And this brilliantly illustrates that shape is just as diverse as size, simply because biological form always dictates function. Look at the rigid bone cells. They excrete minerals to form solid bone around themselves for structural support. Now contrast that with the root hair cells. Their long, thin branches drastically increase their surface area, which makes it so much easier for the plant to absorb water and minerals from the soil. Same basic building block, completely different jobs. Section 4. Prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. So beyond shape and size, the most profound division in all of biology is internal organization. Prokaryotes, like bacteria, are your primitive cells. In fact, the prefix pro means primitive and karyon means nucleus. They're tiny, maybe 1 to 5 micrometers, and they lack a true nuclear membrane, so they keep their circular DNA loose in what's called a nucleoid region. They also completely lack specialized organelles. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, are the advanced models. They are way larger, ranging from 10 to 100 micrometers. They protect their linear DNA, which is wrapped with histones, inside a dedicated headquarters, a true membrane-bound nucleus, and they are packed with numerous specialized organelles.
And that brings us to Section 5, Plant versus Animal Cells.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that humans, animals, and plants are all eukaryotes. We're all in that advanced category, but we have uniquely adapted to our specific lifestyles. Notice the immediate visual contrast here. On the left, animal cheek cells are flexible, they're irregular, and they're bounded only by a thin plasma membrane. But on the right, plant leaf cells look like bricks in a wall, don't they? They're rigid, geometric, and highly structured. This massive visual difference really comes down to just a few key structures. Let's use some simple analogies here. For plant cells, first, they have a rigid cell wall made of cellulose. Think of this as an outer castle wall that provides shape and protection. Second, they have chloroplasts. These are essentially dedicated solar panels to capture sunlight and make food. And third, they have a large permanent vacuole. It's like a massive water tower that maintains pressure so the plant can stand upright against gravity. Now, animal cells, we don't need to make our own food, and we have skeletons to help us stand up. So animal cells lack cell walls and chloroplasts entirely. Their vacuoles are just small and temporary, and they keep their nucleus right in the center. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a bit of a puzzle. We established earlier that the cell theory is the universal rule for living things, right? But there is a glaring exception: viruses. Viruses, viroids, and prions completely lack protoplasm. They exist as subcellular, obligate parasites that literally cannot undergo cell division on their own. They have to hijack host cells to do it for them. So, based on the very rules of biology we just spent all this time learning, it raises a fascinating, honestly kind of provocative question. Are viruses truly alive? I want you to think about that as you continue your biological studies. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the microscopic world.